Hi there, and welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So let's continue on with Tyrion 4, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 5,427 words long. In this chapter, Tyrion Lannister finds he has been taken to the Eyrie instead of Winterfell, which will foil any attempt to rescue him. His attempts to convince Lady Catelyn of his innocence are interrupted when the Vale Mountain clans attack. During the fight, Tyrion saves Catelyn, and afterwards, he explains that Littlefinger's accusation has a hole. Tyrion would never bet against his family. As Tyrion watches the sellsword Chicken butcher his horse, he chalks it up to another debt owed to the Starks. This mare was a gift from his brother Jaime for his 23rd name day. The sellsword Bronn tells Tyrion that none of them will go hungry. But Tyrion replies that he does not like eating horse, particularly his own horse. Bronn responds that the Dothraki like horse better than other meats. Tyrion reflects that maybe his horse is the lucky one, since he has many more cold, hard days ahead of him. As he walks away from the sellswords, Tyrion thinks back bitterly to the night at the Crossroad Inn, when they took him captive. Tyrion had stopped his guard Jaik from going for his sword, knowing it would get them killed. Lady Stark showed the wounds on her hands and all around, claiming they had been caused by Tyrion's dagger during an attack on her son. All the people in the inn, who had been friendly enough before, started screaming for his death, with only his men, Jaik and Morek, to defend him. Tyrion had no choice but to surrender. His other companion, Yoren, being of the Night's Watch, was sworn to take no part in such matters. Catelyn stated often and loudly that they were taking Tyrion to Winterfell for justice. Tyrion had looked over the crowd and seen that things were not as bad as they seemed. Of the roughly 50 men in the common room, Catelyn Stark roused only a bare dozen. He announced that anyone who reported his capture to his father would get a rich reward. So Rodrik then ordered the crowd to remain silent, and had Tyrion struggled not to laugh at the thought that Rodrik was fool enough to believe they would. Catelyn then asked for help in bringing Tyrion to Winterfell, and was rewarded with several recruits. As they bundled him out of the inn, he was not afraid, sure that they would never get him to Winterfell. However, they pulled a hood over his eyes and made a hard gallop through the rain away from the inn. It was dawn and the rain had stopped when they finally pulled the hood off, and Tyrion saw they were on the high road to the Eyrie, not the King's Road to Winterfell, and lost hope. Any pursuit would be looking in the wrong direction, and these were the lands of the late Jon Arryn, and his wife Lysa was a Tully. What was more galling than the abduction was that Lady Catelyn had outwitted him. He was spared the hood after that, and after the second night they no longer bound his hands. Later, they hardly bothered to guard him at all. There was nowhere for him to go. The terrain was harsh and wild, the road no more than a stony track, and the mountains contained Shadowcats and the dangerous Vale Mountain clans. As they travel, Tyrion makes sure to remember the names of all his captors so that he can properly pay them back. A Lannister always pays his debt. He has a particular enmity towards the singer Marillion, whom he blames for the whole mess, and who is currently looking for words that rhyme with imp for a song about this adventure. Catelyn, Rodrik, and several others are discussing their situation and the pursuit by the Lannisters, when Tyrion breaks in with the comment that there is small chance that the pursuit will catch them. Kurlaket snaps that Catelyn did not ask his views, but Catelyn allows him to speak. Tyrion explains any pursuit will be heading up the neck, not towards the Eyrie. He states they will find no help until they reach the Vale, and that at their current pace, they will only lose more mounts, which burdens the others more. The pace could also very likely cause Tyrion's death, which Catelyn obviously doesn't desire. Catelyn replies that Starks are not murderers, and Tyrion states he is also no murderer. He follows up by telling her that he is not stupid, and would not arm a common footpad with his own blade. For a moment, Tyrion can see doubt in Catelyn's eyes, but she asks why Littlefinger would lie. Tyrion replies that lying is in Littlefinger's nature, and mentions how the man often boasts of taking Catelyn's maidenhood, which Catelyn angrily denies. She calls Tyrion an evil man, but Tyrion calls her a fool, continuing on to say that Littlefinger only loves himself and was only interested in sex with her. Kurlaket puts a knife to Tyrion's throat and asks if he can bleed him. but Catelyn again tells him to let Tyrion talk. Tyrion asks how Littlefinger claims he obtained the blade. Catelyn explains that he won the dagger from Littlefinger at the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day, where the Knight of Flowers unhorsed Jaime. The cry of a lookout interrupts them, alerting them to incoming riders, and Catelyn immediately arranges the defense. Tyrion screams to Catelyn to arm him, and his serving men, because she will need every man. Both he and Catelyn know that the mountain clans, who are perfectly happy to slaughter each other, will slaughter Lannister and Stark alike. Laharis slides down the ridge with the news that there are about 25 men, milk snakes or moon brothers, so Willis Woad asks Marillion for help with his breastplate. But the singer freezes with fear. Instead, Morek springs to his assistance. Tyrion pleads again with Catelyn, insisting that she cannot afford to waste men guarding them. At her request, he gives his word that he will put down the weapons when the fight is finished, and she orders them armed. Morek arms himself with a bow, being better with it than a sword, and Bronn offers Tyrion a double-bladed axe. When Tyrion comments on his inexperience with an axe, Bronn tells him to pretend he is splitting logs. Tyrion joins Marillion in his hiding place. Marillion whines that he is a singer and wants no part of the fight, but Tyrion forces his way in. The clansmen charge into sight, armed with a variety of weapons and led by a towering man in a shadowskin cloak, armed with a greatsword. The knights and sellswords meet the charge, as the others shout Winterfell and Harrenhal. Tyrion has to repress an urge to stand up and shout Casterly Rock. From his hiding spot, Tyrion sees Bronn charge through the clansmen, cutting through foes right and left, while Rodrik hammers the leader. Marillion shrieks when a rider leaps over them. When the rider turns, Tyrion charges and cuts the horse's neck so that the rider and his horse fall together on top of Marillion. Tyrion then buries his axe in the man's neck and uses this opportunity to crush Marillion's finger with a boot. For the rest of the battle, Tyrion keeps on the fringes, leaping out to cut at the legs of horses and kill wounded men, taking a helm from one. Tyrion watches Jaek get himself killed, then comes across Krulek's body, and helps himself to the man's dagger. Then he hears a woman scream. Tyrion goes to aid Lady Catelyn, even as he thinks that he should let them have her. Tyrion gets the first man in the knee, and Catelyn kills a second as he reels from a blow by Tyrion. The third man makes a quick retreat, and the fighting is over. As Bronn helps himself to Jaek's boots, he asks if this is Tyrion's first fight, which Tyrion confirms. Bronn then tells him that he needs a woman now. Nothing like a woman after a man's been bloodied. Glancing over to Lady Catelyn, who was dressing Sir Rodrik's wound, Tyrion quips that he is willing if she is. Looking over the dead clansmen, Tyrion notes that they are thin, ragged men with subpar weapons. Tyrion remembers Jaek's bareback charge and thinks of him as a fool to the end. Willis urges that they must proceed in haste before more clansmen arrive, but Catelyn wishes to pause to bury the dead. When Willis points out that the soil is too stony for graves, Catelyn suggests they gather stones for cairns. Bronn tells her that she can do as she likes, but that he and Chicken have better things to do than pile rocks, such as breathing. When Rodrik agrees with Bronn, an angry Catelyn agrees and they ride on. Now there are plenty of horses. As Tyrion mounts Jaek's horse, Lamar demands the dirk Tyrion took from Kerkelok's body, but Catelyn intercedes, telling them to give him back his axe as well. Tyrion is pleased to learn that Marillion the singer has broken several ribs, 4 fingers, and lost his harp. Tyrion is less pleased to find Marillion has also acquired the magnificent Shadowskin cloak. The singer, for once, has nothing to say, and Tyrion can see him cringe when they hear Shadowcats fighting over the bodies they left behind. He trots up to the singer and taunts that Craven rhymes nicely with Raven. Then he moves up to ride next to Lady Catelyn, picking up the conversation from before their interruption. Tyrion points out that there is a serious flaw in Littlefinger's story. He never bets against his family. And this is where Tyrion 4, A Game of Thrones ends. This chapter is mostly plot heavy, but does properly introduce the character of Bronn and Tyrion's future allies, the Vale Mountain clans. Tyrion also chips away at Catelyn's certainty that the dagger is really his. And that's about it for Tyrion 4, A Game of Thrones. In the next video, we'll cover Arya 3 and continue from there. Now, here are the differences between the HBO TV show and book. In the show, Catelyn does not reveal to Tyrion that Littlefinger set him up. Bronn's sellsword companion Chigan is also not present. In the book, Caitlyn's party suffers multiple ambushes by the clansmen on the way to the Vale, and most of their party is killed. Chigan is heavily wounded, and Bronn slices his throat to prevent him from making noises and attract more ambushes. The only survivors are Caitlyn, Tyrion, Sir Roderick, Bronn, Marillion, and Willis Wode. In the show, only a few of their party are killed by the clansmen in the one attack. Besides ambushes, Caitlyn's party also suffers from starvation, and they have to kill horses in order to feed themselves. In the book, Sir Roderick is severely injured during the fight, and Caitlyn fears for his life. He ends up barely making it to the Vale. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.